Hello everyone, it's Mike and Natalie on Thursday, October 4th. That's no moon. At around 5 p.m. here at Irby. This is Surf, the restaurant, one of the various restaurants built into this crazy place I live.
Not sponsored.
Not sponsored, no. It's just a genuine, I guess, endorsement, if crazy is an endorsement. And today I had, and over the past couple of days, I've done a flurry of releases of Pipulate so that you can pip install Pipulate into the Python packaging index, or PYPI, as it's called. And I've learned a lot about the Python packaging and release system. It's not NPM, it's not Node NPM or any of these other more modern ones that have really, been polished at birth. There's a series of stuff that has morphed into what we have today, which is highly functional. It's a Pythonic solution, tried and true, time tested, whatever. But there's definitely this thing called distutils, D-I-S-T-U-T-I-L-S, lurking back there, making everything subtly more complicated than it needs to be. And I've gone through the process and I figured out what a manifest.in is, as opposed to just the auto-generated manifest. And I've gotten down some of the tricks about how the setup.py file that sort of drives the whole process, hi there, is itself a python.py file. So you can do things in there that you would a Python file. So we're just going to walk back and go along the water and enjoy the view as we make this video, and I talk about the next phase of my work that I'm going into and what you can expect to see if you're following Pipulate in the GitHub repo where I'm doing the work. And I was telling Natalie the other day about how people who actually do the cloning of the project from GitHub, people who get the full Pipulate from GitHub, are getting probably around 50 megabytes of ancient history from two older versions of Pipulate. It has gone through complete scraps and rebuilds, but I have not rebased it for historical reasons, and I have not erased anything for fear of the stars and I have a lot of stars and followers built up in GitHub, and I don't want to lose it. So I'm keeping the whole history of the project there. It's an interesting talking point. Probably one day for efficiency, I'll rebase the repo, which means wipe out the history arbitrarily before a certain point where that stuff just has no application anymore to the modern version of it. So, the files that make a program run might be under a megabyte, but the commit by commit history that is stored every time you pull down the repo on your local machine can grow to hundreds of megabytes for a under 1 megabyte actual running program. But that's just the nature of the game, and I'll probably rebase eventually. But until I do, I think I'm just going to let this rich story be told. And it's the story of moving from one set of assumptions to another, changing my actual thinking about what programming is. And I've become better and better at Python in the sense of the Hitchhiker's Guide to Python. Kenneth Reitz, the writer of Requests, the request package, HTTP for humans, that is basically loading web pages from a script file easily, as easy as it is in other modern languages like Ruby. That makes it really easy. Ruby makes loading web pages and doing web stuff really, really easy. And from a pure beauty standpoint, Ruby is a very beautiful language. Python is not that beautiful, but neither are the most functional things in the world. Yeah, form follows function, and when things are pandering to the road most traveled, so that it can be most useful to the most number of people, with the least weighing down the overall product due to edge cases. You know, basically you got to handle every edge case to the extreme that the benevolent dictator Guido van Rossum believes it should be. So Python has not become excessively bloated, and there's always issues about what ends up in the main distribution of Python in core, the core standard library, and things like Kenneth Wright's incredibly useful and incredibly popular requests package does not reach core. It does not become part of the standard library, but that's fine because pip install requests. So what we're talking about here is the, you know, loosely affiliated group of people who keep this PyPy organization going, the servers that are required, the programming time on the free and open source projects. They've just undergone a number of improvements recently that make the Python packaging and distribution system on par with things like Node.js's NPM system. So that's okay. So that's a system I've been figuring out so that you can pip install Pipulate. I've got a little bit of share on that front, but it's probably not the real point of this video. The point of this video is the shift in thinking in what is a framework and what is a package, and you know, what is custom programming and what is using a proprietary product, and you know, what is using a product that has a visual interface with supports, you know, using a mouse and drop down menus versus what it is to be using a type in interface. So these are very strong opinions that have been formed over many, many years of mostly failure, going the wrong way, doing the wrong thing, and then backing up, refactoring, trying again. And that over the years has brought me through a lot of generations of having to give up technologies that I have adopted, starting to use things and then having to stop because the platform isn't there anymore, Amiga computer. And, you know, to really be into something like this technical stuff to a degree where you can base a career around it, you can really love what you do. The point is to love what you do. The point is for it to be love worthy. And I loved tech when it was the Amiga computer, and I worked for Commodore, and I actually did work using the Scala multimedia product, one of the few things on the Amiga where you could just have a career because you knew how to use that software. Scala was big enough, and then I went to work for Scala. And once the Amiga went totally away and it became a PC game and a real video editing game out there, I lost interest, just like the way I lost interest in graphic design. Even though I consider myself something of an artist, I am...
You are.
Thank you.
I agree.
I appreciate that.
Thumbs up if you agree.
Maybe it's just that I don't have very thick of skin, and I had to switch out of fields where everything was super subjective. And you know, is there enough air around that too? You know, everyone's has an opinion, and everyone's opinion is right, and everyone's opinion is wrong. After a while, I just got into programming and data, where the program worked or the program didn't. And I got into programming, and it was on, you know, the Amiga stuff originally, even some older stuff like the Coleco Atom. So loser platform after loser platform. I mean, God bless the Amiga, is a wonderful computer, but the main value of it is in the things about general Linux and Unix that I learned while I used it, because it had enough similar principles, like when using the type-in interface, the command line or CLI in the Amiga world, you could pipe commands to each other. It had the same basic wiring, let's call it, as Unix, if not the same, you know, operating system kernel and core. So yeah, so one thing leads to another, and after a while you get this understanding, just this intuitive notion that things written for Unix in a Unix-like way are most likely to run for the longest period of time. And they're most likely to be maintainable, to be readable and understandable by other people, and to be able to be modernized and refactored and always kept running no matter how things change, because some version of Unix is, you know, these commands piping things to each other means you can, it's a modular system, with interoperable communication by design, and that gets you a lot because you can gut certain components, put new components in. So that's the way Unix works. That's why Linux was a clone of Unix. That's why Unix and Linux together are the operating systems that won. Everyone knows that. And so you should know them a little bit in order to generally get your stuff running. Once it's running, you move over to Python because 80-20 rule, all the reasons that, you know, if you want to do something other than coding as your main thing, like I guess I'm SEO, I'm making coding my main thing, but that's like pursuing a dream. My real field is SEO, of building audience on the web. And if your main thing is something other than coding, what you want is a language. It just fades into the background. And you know, the worst thing for programming and coding are what it's called, programming and coding. It should just be called speaking, because it is expressing yourself. That's it. It's expressing yourself in such a way that the thing meant to hear it is more like a player piano that plays back your instructions precisely than it is like a human listening, where it can be very loosely interpreted and such. So, you know, speaking is a much more complex, you know, process than coding. Coding is simple by comparison, and if you approach it and learn it and internalize the relatively simple set of rules compared to the spoken word, you can automate things around you. You don't have to wait for, you know, AIs to become smart enough to hear what you're saying and, you know, be your co-programmer, which is, I think, what a lot, it's like waiting for cars to be self-driving instead of learning to drive. So a lot of people out there are going to be doing that kind of stuff. They're going to have these decisions to make. You just wait it out and not learn a skill, or bite the bullet and invest a tremendous amount of time and energy into something that might let you down, might disappoint you. So my message is, particular platform, my product, if you will, is a particular thing you can pip install, right? Pip install Pipulate, and it's to do the things that I do that require automation. But in order to make it easy to sort of start out light, I advocate Jupyter Notebook, which is a really easy way to get using Python. You download something called Anaconda. The hardest part is just understanding what to load, what to install, where to download it, and once you do, what to do to get a notebook going. Once you have a notebook, a Jupyter Notebook, inside your browser, usually your Chrome web browser, you're in business. You can copy and paste the command that installs Pipulate and start automating Google Spreadsheets. That's my trick. I automate Google Spreadsheets to create generally marketing dashboards so you can keep on top of things. That's kind of like my new my new data mastering field that I'm repositioning myself into from SEO, because all these things are the gifts that keep on giving. Once you learn how to create dashboards without these proprietary vendor products like Tableau or even Google not Search Console, but Google Data Studio, I think it's Data Studio, the more you're able to improve over the years, because you get access to that sort of software from expensive licenses that are usually paid by your employer. So long as you keep working for that same employer, your skills are applicable. And then if and when the time comes to switch jobs, you're very keyed to a particular vendor's piece of software and skill set and expertise. But if you're a Python coder, you're in a whole nother realm, qualified for a whole nother set of things across industries.
It's like the nature master.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, that's my message. If you're going to be doing some repositioning of yourself professionally, skill-wise, you could certainly do a lot worse than Linux, Python, and then the two more controversial pieces. One controversial, Git you can't get away from, but Vim. Yeah. So even though I almost always advocate the 80-20 rule, the 80% of the effort the 20% of the effort that gives you the 80% of the benefit, staying on the beaten track, doing what most people are doing so that it's well documented and you don't hit these gotchas. On certain things where it really matters, you violate it a little bit in order to get the benefits that are there. And becoming one of these Vim users is one of these things. I know that's, I'll let it speak for itself. Try getting Vim even running on your machine and you'll see what I'm talking about. I'll do a number of videos that generally cover that, I'm generally advocating making a Linux-like terminal window your main 50% of your main day-to-day thing, the way you operate the computer. The other part being a web browser. All that other stuff, native software, desktop of whatever, Mac or Windows, is almost inconsequential. Get your work focused into a terminal window and a web browser, and use Linux, Python, Vim, and Git as your basic developer stack and code execution stack, and you will be qualified for a great deal of things. And this video series will start out with stupid data tricks. So install Anaconda, run Jupyter Notebook, get a notebook going, and then pip install Pipulate, or do it in the way that you'll see in the comments at the bottom of this video. I'll put the little snippet of code that makes sure that the install works correct every time on your Jupyter Notebook. It's starting to rain.
Okay.
So that looks like a good place to wrap up. Thanks for joining us. We hope to see you again soon, and don't forget to subscribe and thumbs up the video.